interest in today. Saif Ali Khan is out of hospital, but there is a report from November that is now back in focus. A TIS report that was dismissed as political, but today it seems almost prophetic. We'll talk about the Dalit vote in the Delhi elections. Everyone is talking about the Samvidhan, talking about Jai Bhim, Jai Ambedkar, but are they putting their money where their mouth is? And we'll also tell you how pigeons and pigeon poop are literally poisoning you. But first, let's talk about Saif Ali Khan. 5 days after surviving a robbery cum knifing attempt on his life, he was finally released from hospital. His fans and family heaved a sigh of relief as they saw the star walk out smiling and clean shaven. But there is renewed concern about another issue that has for long remained a political hot potato in India. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to address it. The issue of illegal Bangladeshi infiltrators across India, including in Mumbai. And this debate has been reignited because of the identity of the man who knifed Saif Ali Khan, Mohammad Shariful Islam Shehzad. Shehzad is accused of breaking into Saif's house and then stabbing him during a botched robbery attempt. And it's also revealed now that he entered India illegally from Bangladesh before finally making his way to Maximum City. The police says it has emerged during questioning that Shehzad entered India crossing the Dwaki River in Meghalaya. His original birth certificate shows that he belongs to the Jhalokati district in Bangladesh, where his two brothers and parents continue to live. He's unmarried, and so far no relatives of his have been discovered in India. The police also haven't found any Indian identification documents on him. The cops finally zeroed in on his family's identity in Bangladesh when they checked his call details and found that he had made several calls to Bangladesh on various mobile apps. Now, thankfully, this Bangladeshi attacker is behind bars. But the spotlight is and should be on the bigger problem: illegal immigration and the danger it poses. A danger that was red flagged in a report by the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in November last year. The report found that a significant number of illegal immigrants in Mumbai are from Bangladesh and Myanmar, and that they are now influencing the socio-economic and political scene in the city. What is ironic is that at that time in November, remember that's also election season in Maharashtra, this report was shot down as a political ruse and red herring. Well, what do you say now? Anyhow, so what did this report say? Out of the total sample presented of 300 immigrants, 295 or 98.33% were found to be Muslims. Most of these people, once they enter Mumbai, were concentrated in the areas of Dharavi, Govandi, Mankhurd, Mahim West and Ambedkar Nagar. Incidentally, these are also areas that have seen claims of alleged vote jihad during the Mumbai elections. The allegation was that it is such illegals who are deliberately settled in vulnerable spots in India, and then they are given documents in order to make them voters and influence the political outcome of that place. The next key data is that of unemployment. The same study reveals that 60% of the illegals surveyed were employed illegally as well. The rest simply didn't have any jobs. They accepted far lower wages, they flooded the job market and undercut Mumbai's local workforce. This drove down wages and also displaced the locals, the residents of that area, which is why the significant resentment to any kind of such settlers, because the locals then would find themselves simply pushed out of the job market. But the problem is not just the unemployment that they create, it's far worse. It's not without reason that it is said an empty mind is a devil's workshop. The TIS study found that a large part of this population from Bangladesh engaged in criminal activities. While the men were found to be involved in crimes like drug trafficking and smuggling, a majority of the women were pushed into prostitution. The report came out in November, and in January, a man like Shehzad, an undocumented illegal, strikes at the house of Saif Ali Khan. Seems almost prophetic now, doesn't it? It's a pity that often such warnings are brushed off or ignored for simply political reasons. But how does the movement of such immigrants take place? Crime branch sources in the Mumbai police have told the media that a majority of the illegal Bangladeshi population enters the country through regions like Malda, 24 Parganas, Murshidabad, Dineshpur and Chapli Nawabganj in West Bengal. This fact, by the way, was also corroborated in the study carried out by the Tata Institute. The survey by TIS found that 60% of the immigrants came through Bengal, followed by 10% through Assam and 11% through Bihar. What's interesting is that this crime nexus is now working like a well-oiled machine. Infiltrate, travel, settle, integrate. The police has also disclosed the presence of rate cards for all these illegals to choose from. Crossing Bangladeshis pay hefty amounts to agents for illegal entry. The mountain route is the riskiest and the entry there is fixed at 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per person. The water route in comparison is a cheaper option. For this, one has to pay 2,000 to 4,000 rupees per person, but it's extremely dangerous due to dangers like crocodiles and even Bengal tigers. The flatland route is considered the safest, but it is also naturally the most expensive. For this, each person has to shell out 12 to 15,000 rupees to the agents. These agents often help them cross the border in connivance with members of the BRP or the Bangladesh Rifles. Is there a rise in infiltration? Well, according to official data, 1,956 Bangladeshi nationals were apprehended by BSF troops between August and December of 2024. This 5-month period accounted for more than 50% of the year's total apprehensions of Bangladeshi nationals, which stood at 3,474. A possible reason for that could be the falling of the Sheikh Hasina government on the 5th of August. The number of people crossing over after that went up exponentially. According to a report of the BSF, as many as 9,233 Bangladeshis have been held at the international border while they were trying to flee back after their illegal stay in the country during the period of 1st of January 2019 to April 2022. At least 4,896 Bangladeshi nationals were held while trying to enter India during the same period.
अगर बांग्लादेशी मुंबई में, महाराष्ट्र में, देश में है तो जिम्मेदार कौन है? आपका गृह मंत्री है देश का। आपके देश के गृह मंत्री जो है वो क्या कर रहे हैं? आपके डिफेंस मिनिस्टर है, वहाँ से सीमा पार, बॉर्डर पार करके बांग्लादेशी कैसे घुस रहे हैं आप बताइए। तो ये जिम्मेदारी भारतीय जनता पार्टी की, अगर बांग्लादेशी एक भी घुस गया है मुंबई में तो उनकी है, तो वो जवाब दीजिए।
कुछ बता रही है पुलिस के बांग्लादेशी है, मगर उसके जो वकील है उन्होंने कहा कि वो तो बहुत सालों से यहाँ रह रहे, वो इतने सालों से यहाँ था। अगर बांग्लादेशी था जैसा लोग बोल रहे तो सरकार तो बीजेपी की है यहाँ पर इतने बरसों से, क्यों वॉच नहीं रखे? बॉर्डर पे कौन खड़ा रहता है? जितने मेजर बॉर्डर है वहां पे तो सरकार बीजेपी की है। तो ये क्या है, किसको भी कुछ बोल देना?
बिल्कुल एलजी साहब ने ठीक कहा कि दिल्ली के अंदर जहां पर भी बांग्लादेशी या रोहिंग्यास इन्फिल्ट्रेटर्स हैं, जहां घुसपैठियां हैं, उनको मार्क कर उनको आइसोलेट कर उनको डिपोर्टेशन का प्रोसेस शुरू करना चाहिए और उसमें दिल्ली पुलिस को तुरंत कार्रवाई करनी चाहिए।
Well, there was absolutely right the argument given by the Shiv Sena UBT that yes, it is the responsibility of the centre. But remember, it is also such political parties who, when there is an attempt to try and document such illegals, when there was an effort to try and carry out the activity, create a national register of citizens to identify who's a bona fide citizen of India and who has settled here illegally, remember which parties raise their voice against it the loudest. In an ideal world, infiltration should not happen at all. But at least when it comes to getting rid of people who have managed to enter, who have managed to settle here, who pose a threat to national security, who could create a law and order situation, who could engage in a crime, one's fondest hope is that every political party would be unanimous. They wouldn't just pay lip service, they would actually walk the talk. Last year, when TIS released its report, there were cries of how this is an effort to communalize the election process. Now, when you know about Muhammad Shariful Islam coming in and engaging in a crime, it's quite apparent that this danger is clear and present. Now we can either decide to harvest it for politics or deal with the problem head on. Politics is in the air, elections are in the air, and as a part of it, the Congress party held its Jai Bapu, Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan rally in Belagavi in Karnataka. Originally, this was to take place on the 27th of December last year, but was postponed due to the passing away of Dr. Manmohan Singh. However, even though the rally took place in Karnataka, its connection to the Delhi polls is unmistakable. Rahul Gandhi is now on a mission to try and regain the Congress's traditional Dalit vote bank and even succeeded to an extent in the 2024 Lok Sabha election by playing on the imagery of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the Constitution of India. He followed this up by sporting the trademark deep blue of Dalit politics in Parliament along with other INDI members. But the Congress isn't the only one. The outreach to the sizable Dalit vote in the Delhi elections is a part of every party's poll strategy this time around. And each party made it a point that they gave a symbolic hat tip to the community by doing the rounds of Valmiki temples both for campaigning and before filing their nominations. But the question is, did this outreach stop at tokenism or is there any real representation? Before we go any further, let's tell you why all this effort and outreach is being made. The 24.6 lakh Dalits in Delhi make up 17% of the total voters in the state. That's nearly 1/5. Along with the 12 seats that are SC reserved, that is reserved for scheduled castes, Dalit voters wield influence over a total of 30 seats. In the Sheila Dikshit era, the Dalit, Muslim and slum dweller vote, which is the DM slum dweller vote, stayed firmly behind the Congress and gave them a winning formula for a decade. But the advent of the Aam Aadmi Party changed all that. Even in the 2020 elections, the AAP swept all 12 seats reserved for the scheduled castes. You can imagine the support they enjoyed in the community from the fact that the reserved seats they won had as much as 44% Dalit population in Sultanpur Majra and 41% in Karol Bagh and so on. So it's a hefty vote and it nearly unanimously backed the Aam Aadmi Party. But this time around, the going is not as smooth for the Aam Aadmi Party. In the recent past, two major Dalit faces have bid them a not so pleasant goodbye. First, Rajendra Pal Gautam quit the cabinet and the party in 2022 after a very unsavory controversy. He's now in the Congress. Then, the man who replaced Gautam in the Arvind Kejriwal cabinet, Patel Nagar MLA Rajkumar Anand, also flew the coop in April last year. He now has gone to the BJP. So everyone wants Dalit votes. Everyone is reaching out to them. Everyone is wooing them. Are they giving them as many tickets? An analysis of the candidate list shows quite the opposite. Ironically, the parties who speak the loudest for increasing the representation of Dalit Pichda Alpsankyak in politics and public life ended up giving almost half their tickets to upper castes. In Delhi, 48% of the candidates fielded by Aam Aadmi Party are upper caste, much in excess of their numerical strength, which is roughly around 30%. Which means that the upper castes in Delhi are just 30% of the total voters, but got 48% of the tickets from ruling AAP. At second position is the BJP and its allies at 45%, and the Congress is also at a sizable 35%. If one was to look only at the Brahmin population, their growth and over-representation becomes even more stark. Brahmins constitute about 13% of Delhi's population, but when it comes to the number of MLAs from this community, this number went from 10% in 2008 to 13% in 2013. In 2015, it zoomed to 20% and stayed at 20% in 2020. Which means that Brahmins are also hugely overrepresented in Delhi politics. 13% strength, but 20% representation. Look at how things change though when we are talking about Dalits. Dalits got tickets to the seats, only the seats that are reserved for them. with the result that their representation remains just about proportional to their size, which is 17% of the population. And that makes one ask, why? Why is it that all the parties speak of Dalit rights and Dalit representation, but they are not walking the talk when it comes to actually giving them tickets? And you know what the biggest surprise is? The biggest surprise is that of all the parties, it is the BJP which ended up giving maximum number of tickets to Dalits in this election. In addition to the 12 seats reserved for them, the BJP fielded 2 candidates from the general seat. The Congress fielded 1 from a general seat, and the Aam Aadmi Party only stuck to the 12 reserved seats. The question that now arises is it enough then to just waive the constitution or speak of Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan? Will parties who talk about social justice and Dalit representation really walk that extra mile and give tickets to the community? Or will that be reserved only to virtue signaling? Now let's talk about a story that is going to leave you very, very uncomfortable, because I've often seen, you would have also seen when you drive to office, a lot of people who are standing by the roadside feeding pigeons. A lot of you do it in the name of the love for birds. Sometimes you do it in the name of faith. But do you know that this simple act of what you think is kindness can cost you your health, maybe even your life? We're not here to scare you, but you must know that your love for pigeons is literally putting poison in your lungs. Have you heard of bird breeders' lung disease? You should, because it is also the bird feeders' lung disease. Commonly known as the avian hypersensitivity pneumonitis, its cases have risen dramatically in India and among those who are the most vulnerable. People who are most likely to get infected are those who feed pigeons, pet store employees, and poultry workers. Highly allergenic bird droppings can lead to inflammatory lung conditions. When you're feeding birds, their bird droppings are getting into your lungs. And it's not just limited to the feeding areas. When these birds when their population explodes and they carry all these droppings with them, other people get exposed and they get interstitial lung disease or ILD, a chronic condition that makes breathing tough. A 2019 study published in the journal Lung India analyzed the data of patients with ILD in 19 Indian cities over 3 years. The odds of developing the disease were highest in those who were exposed to birds. Another important finding was that those living in cities, as many as 70%, are at risk for infections compared to those in rural areas. And the reason, yes, you guessed it right, because in urban areas, you will have all of these feeding points where people will take slow-mo pictures with the pigeons flying in the background while you feed them. Well, guess what? This is why you're getting your lung disease. Any part of Delhi or Mumbai you go to, you will see all of these feeding spots, and now municipal corporations have been petitioned to get rid of them. Speaking of Delhi, doctors have already raised an alarm here, saying that the national capital is seeing a rise in immunologically mediated lung disease due to repetitive exposure to airborne avian antigens. Pigeon droppings, till now considered a mere nuisance, are now recognized as potential source of serious health risks, and here's how. Pigeon droppings are laced with fungus, which if inhaled for some time can affect your immune system. These harmful fungi are released into the air as dust particles when the feces dry out. The fungal infection can cause pneumonia-like symptoms like coughing, fever, shortness of breath. In severe cases, it can lead to meningitis. It can damage your brain and infect your spinal cord. People with weakened immune systems are particularly susceptible. What is worse, that the more they eat, the more they breed, the more they proliferate. Pigeon numbers, as a result, are booming in India. The gravity of the situation can be assessed from the 2023 State of India's Birds Report. Between 2000 and 2023, the population of pigeons in India increased by more than 150%. They more than doubled. Do you know that this boom is the highest in the entire world, the highest percentage increase of all the birds whose populations went up. The mushrooming of pigeon feeding spots have contributed to this explosion. Health risks just follow. What's the way out? In San Francisco, feeding pigeons on streets, sidewalks, and in parks is illegal. Singapore imposes fines as high as $10,000 for the same offence, and Toronto in Canada has implemented both a bylaw against feeding wildlife and birth control in pigeon food to control the population. Closer home, the Pune Municipal Corporation and the Municipal Corporation in Thane have slapped a fine of 500 rupees on anyone who feeds pigeons in the open. Ornithologist Ashish Pitti is one of those who have sounded a health warning. He has linked the rise of pigeon population to bird fanciers' lung disease. Among the famous victims of hypersensitive pneumonitis are Marlon Brando, Mansoor Ali Khan Patodi, James Doohan of Star Trek fame, and Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws. But remember, you and I are equally at risk. And that's the reason why every time you step out thinking that you're doing a good deed, remember you're doing a serious disservice not only to your own health, but also to those around you. Well, that's it then on today's edition of In Your Interest. Remember to keep your appointment with us tomorrow, same time. See you then.
ये बड़ा होके मम्मी का, पापा का, दादू का सबका ध्यान रखेगा।
रिटायरमेंट के बाद किसी पे बोझ ना बनने का परफेक्ट प्लान। कैनरा HSBC लाइफ इंश्योरेंस रिटायरमेंट प्लान। कैनरा HSBC लाइफ इंश्योरेंस, प्रॉमिसेस का पार्टनर।
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
Mama must be missing us, na?
Let's take you on, babe, give me one day. Feel the itch on my skin, it's a one day. You been like it when you see we hit up, hey. But it doesn't matter, just gotta get going.
New GT line, Taigun and Virtus. Volkswagen.
I will take you to Paris.
Paris नहीं, Paris. तुम्हारा pronunciation भी ना, तुम्हारे इरादे की तक।
मैडम इरादे कभी ऑफ नहीं होते हैं, टेक ऑफ करते हैं।
SBI लाइफ स्मार्ट प्लैटिना सुप्रीम के गारंटीड रिटर्न से करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे। SBI लाइफ, अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए।
We are at the highest airfield in India and one of the highest airfield in the world. It is the most beautiful airfield in India. There's no aircraft that cannot land on this airfield.
This will be the highest airfield in India and 5th in the world.
This particular runway will cater for most of the military aircraft, fighters and transport landing.
A strategic edge to the forces, deterrent for our neighboring countries.
Jai Hind.
Yes, 100% completion. TV9 News and your News9 Plus is the first team here.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Victory for the East India Company in the Battle of Plassey marked the beginning of their rule over Bengal and later almost all of the Indian subcontinent.
When Clive arrives in Murshidabad after the victory of Plassey, 24 boats are loaded with the treasure of the Murshidabad treasury and punted down the river to Fort William, Calcutta. Anything that's said to belong to Tipu was acquired and sold and traded and treasured.
They always knew that at some point in time, they will have to come to a state where they will have to fight with the Marathas.
You know, the Kohinoor has in the eyes of the colonizers and the colonized become a sort of symbol of colonial loot.
This loot is displayed in British museums. India's looted treasures.
From the highlands of Afghanistan to the jungles of Vietnam, the deserts of Africa, to street battles in Mosul, the AK-47 has dominated every conflict. But what if it could be made even better? Enter the SSS Defense P-72, India's answer to the AK-47. So how good is it? Let's find out.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Valuations